Introduction. And welcome, Veronica. Very happy to have you here. So let's dive in, and maybe we can start with you sharing with us your motivation behind your book. What were some of the aha moments or events that led you to share this story with, such a great audience, large audience? Yep.
Well, thank you so much, Gertrudis. First, before I answer any questions, I just want to thank everyone for being here. It is really an honor to have you join this call and have you honor this nice story and making the time. I know some people are dialing in from London. I don't know from what other places you're dialing in, but I truly appreciate you making the time. And I hope to make this meaningful for you, interactive. So I know we're going to have time to ask some questions towards the end. But if anything resonates with you, or as I'm speaking, if you have anything that stands out for you or any questions, just put it on the chat and I'll try to address as well. Okay, so we'll make this fun and interactive for everybody. So, all right, is everyone good? Awesome. So I want to start by answering Gertrudis' questions, like what was the motivation for me to write the book. So I have to just say that I used to compete in public speaking with Toastmasters, and I joined an international speech competition, and I had to go through several layers to get to the international stage. But in one of these competitions, I competed with a speech called 140 Miles of Life. That was it. And it was a 7-minute speech that was about the Ironman. And in between, there were some events of my life. And that's the way I broke it down. And when you public speak, you have to like act and this. So pretty much when I talked about the swim, the bike, and the run, in between, I will talk about my childhood trauma, then religious trauma, and then at the end, the healing aspect of life, everything in 7 minutes. As I was competing and winning like first place in the one category, and then the next event, some people came to me and said, Veronica, have you ever thought about writing a book? And I at that point, it was not even on my mind. I said, no, not really. And life is so busy that I didn't think I was like ready to write something, or it was even in my awareness. I did not make it to the international speech competition, but I got really close to it. And I think life for me, I always think that life happens perfectly. I tried to compete again with that speech. And at some point in my life, I think it was always like, wow, this is an interesting title. Because it's framed around the longest endurance race in the world, Ironman, which you will find out if you started to read the book or maybe in the description that I competed in this race. But it was just in my awareness until my grandma, who raised me when I was, since my mom died when I was 9 years old. She died about 5 years ago. And she was my world. She was everything to me. So I think all of us have experienced some sort of loss. And you know what that feels like. But it was like losing my mom twice. And when she died, my heart broke wide open. Oh my gosh, talk about asking yourself questions about what matters in life. That was my time. And it took me several months to deal with this loss, miss her so much. And I did not necessarily, I cannot say that I started writing at that point because I had a purpose. I don't think I had a purpose. I just wanted to tell the story. I felt like it was time. My heart was so open. And I started writing, and I wanted to honor her also through the story, because you'll find a lot about her in the book. And as I was writing, and I started to, oh my gosh, and I don't know if some of you have done this, you go and revisit times in your life when you're a child, when, the fact that I grew up as a Mormon, I came out as gay, And you start writing all of this, I started receiving messages that there was something bigger there than just about my life, than even about my grandmother. Then there was an important purpose, and I received my purpose as I started writing the book. And it became very apparent. There were moments that I would start writing through this that when I would revisit, for instance, times when I was part of the Mormon church, and I had to, in the book, you'll find out that I had to describe about the Mormon temple ceremony and all of this. And I would start writing and not be able to stop until 3 a.m. And I would receive like these downloads and just any other aspects of my life. And then I realized, there is a bigger purpose here. And then my heart connected to that. And I committed to writing the book to the end, because it's a commitment, it's a discipline. I had to go on trips to see clients. I'm a global sales leader. So I will have to get on planes. And I had to make a choice. Did I watch a movie and enjoy the ride, or did I write? And I often connected to my purpose and said, no, I have to write. And whatever free time I had, I committed to doing this because I knew it was an important message.
I love that connection between finding your purpose, healing, and writing, right? Or healing through the writing, and then
That's
the purpose coming into that mix. Definitely something that processing through writing is something that I personally identify with.
Yeah.
So I love that story. So give us a little bit more about your childhood story. Definitely the part about your mom was very shocking. You mentioned it now, and it's very early in the book. So tell us a little bit more about that part.
About my childhood, and
yes,
a little bit about my mom. Well, before I start, how many of you have started to read the book? Don't feel bad if you haven't, because maybe you need to find out, okay, is this interesting? Okay, a few of you. All right, for those who are interested afterwards, it's good. Now I'm going to tell you something new that you haven't read. But I was born in Guayaquil, Ecuador, the equator. I would say about 90 degrees weather. That's what feels like home for me. So you can imagine how I feel in New York when at this time. But I grew up there, and what I can say is that I grew up in a culture that was about connection and community. So it's not surprising to see several generations living in the same home. Growing up, I remember living with my parents, great grandmother, uncles, aunts, cousins, all of us in this big home. So, and neighbors were like my extended family. And we took care of one another. If something happened to one of us, it felt like it happened to all of us. And it was beautiful to have that type of connection. I don't think I ever felt the isolation of the soul. There is no such thing as loneliness there. And that's how I grew up. And I feel that that somehow transfers into how I am right now. I am the person in my circle of friends who would bring people together to share, to talk. Let's not even look at our cell phones or anything. Let's just connect. How are you really doing? Right? And that's how I am now in my personal life. But something else that was important is that education was very important. I grew up in a place where we prioritize school over anything else. My schoolmates lived in the same block, so we will get together, study. You have to choose a major since you are like in 9th grade or less than that. And my major was physics and math. So what was fun for us, believe it or not, is that we will all get together and resolve math problems and physics problems together and see who would answer first. And that was one of the ways that we connected. Second, in school, there was such a high level of respect for teachers. You know, we all were in the same classroom, and when it was the teachers that will come in, we always stay in the same place. And every time a teacher will come in, everybody will stand up at the same time and say, "Good morning, professor." And you don't sit down until the professor says, "You may sit down," and all of us sit down at the same time. So I grew up with that level of respect for education, for teachers, all of that. So coming here, transitioning into this culture was really interesting. So I'm going now to answer your question, or Trudis, is that I came here after my mom died, a few years after my mom died. I should highlight that my mom left my dad when I was 4 years old. So she was a single mom. And my father did provide. He came to the United States right after, and he provided, he sent money for the family, and that including my mom. But he was not there. Like, I did not grow up with a father figure. And us, you know, my mom and I, it was really just us. And she had to go through a lot to take care of her only child, being a single mother. And she was, but there was one thing that she always did. She would pick me up from school every day. She was a cook, by the way. She was a maid. And she had to arrange her schedule so she could always be there for me every time I left school, drop me off, pick me up, and everything. And I was so attached to her that I would try to be the first one on the line before the school doors will open, so that I could be the first one to run to my mom every time she showed up. And she would try to be the first one also outside, so she could open her arms and pick me up, hug me. And that was a ritual. And then one night, she often had these headaches. And as a child, you don't understand about illness, anything. But one night she actually fainted, and her vision was affected, and she was not doing well. But she went to bed. Her friends helped her, and the next morning, I got up, or I was about to get up to go to school as usual. And I was sleeping next to her. I never wanted to sleep in my own bed, so I was sleeping next to her. And as I tried to move to get ready to go to school, my mom, who by the way was of African descent, she was half black, half white, so I can describe her. She moved at the moment that I tried to get up for school, and she turned towards me, dark skin, light hazel eyes, beautiful lady. And she looked at me and she said in Spanish, with sad eyes, mi hijita, que Dios la bendiga, my little child, may God bless you. And I did not understand her sadness, but I felt it. If I look back as an adult, it's like you feel all those emotions. And then she gives me a hug, and I just got ready. There was someone else who helped me get ready. I went to school. Then 1 p.m., the bell rings. I get on the line. I get the first one. I'm ready to go. Doors open. My mom is not there. And then I see all the kids running to their parents. And then my mom is not there. All the kids left. The school closed. And I sat on the sidewalk for hours by myself, just waiting for someone to show up. And I remember not even moving, just grabbing my legs, and then I was there. As a child, you don't understand what's happening. But around 5 p.m., a taxi comes like towards me like this. And it's like an ambulance coming towards you. And then I'm sitting there. And then I looked at my mom's sister inside the car. And she used to live in another city. So for me to see her was surprising. And then she just opens the door, tears in her eyes, grabs me and pulls me in. And she says, "Oh, mijita, I'm so glad you're still here." And then she gives me a hug. And then I seriously have no emotions, because as a child, it almost seems like you're somewhere in some orbit, just floating, not able to process. And then she tells me in Spanish, "Si tu mamá se muriera, ¿con quién quisieras vivir? If your mom dies, who would you want to live with?" Well, what does that mean to me? What am I supposed to say at 9 years old? I didn't say anything. I didn't answer. And that was I mean, a few days later, my mom was already in a coma. A few days later, there was a phone call. I was just there now with whichever family I was living with, and just heard someone getting a call and answering, oh my gosh, Victoria died. That was my mom saying, Victoria died. That was it. That was it for me. That was definitely what I call in the book, the end of the first chapter, the big chapter in my life, because my life changed significantly. And what I can add to this is that when a child doesn't have now her father, her mother, I was lucky to have grandma, but she could only protect me so much. And maybe I should add, through the same finish with this part of your question, is that a few years later, a short years, maybe 4 years later, my father asked for me to come to the United States to live with him and his wife, but his wife didn't want me there. So eventually I ended up in a foster home for a short amount of time. And that was the contrast between my culture, the connectedness, the togetherness, having my grandma there for me, and then coming to this country and the contrast that I had to adjust to this culture, to adjust to life, how it changed for me. And maybe that's a good moment to stop her through this. What do you think?
Yes, I think so. And thanks so much for sharing. Definitely something that, at least for me personally, even though I have not gone through anything similar to what you have gone through, I could definitely feel what probably you were, something close to what you were feeling through your words. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you, Gertrudis.
Yep. So there are definitely many interesting stories in your books, different levels of emotions and challenges, right? But what would you say are some of those stories that are the most interesting to you?
Well, I would say, and not just to me, but what I'm getting phone calls now or text messages from people, which I love to get, right? Either people find me on LinkedIn or friends that know me or people that have met me from companies that I work for, and they text me, oh my gosh, some people have told me, I couldn't put your book down. I read it in 2 days, right? Or 3 days. And I was going through a really hard time. And these are some high level executives, right? You're talking from someone from Facebook or something. They call me and said, oh my gosh, it really helped me see my life from a different perspective and the challenges that I'm going through. And what I love about that is, and they're not even talking about childhood trauma or religious trauma or anything. They're talking about life traumas, like professional challenges. Then they can kind of look at the messages in the book and say, oh my gosh, what am I thinking? You know, it is life. I can do this. Diane Silverman said, you told the universe rewards bravery. I love to read comments, by the way, while I'm speaking, right? So yes, and the one of the calls that I love the most is from a high senior executive from Facebook who called me and said, I call me on a Sunday and I'm going to be vulnerable with you. I'll tell you why that call was significant. Because I always been connected to my purpose. I told you, as I was writing it, I felt like, I know there is a purpose. You feel it. It comes even from a higher power, whatever that is, my own higher self. And I knew I had to finish a book. But when it was finished, by the way, I had a great mentor. She's a successful writer. She believed in the story so much that she was the one who pushed me also to finish it. You have to finish it. Some of her books have been made into films and everything. So she's like, you have to finish this book, Veronica. So I did. And then when I sent it out, because she guided me through the process for, just to see to some agents, the first agent just said, no, this is not ready. And then she said, no, wait a second, you're not going to take the first no. Now send it to this publishing firm. So I'm telling you this because I didn't realize, I thought I had years or months until the book was going to be published. I'd psychologically get myself ready, but it got picked up within like 2 months, 3 months from a publishing firm. So once it got picked up, I remember thinking, this is great news. And then I have a second home here in Charlotte. This is where I am right now. So I went back to Jersey because I had a book launch party. And I sat there by myself on a Sunday. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I am a sales leader at LinkedIn for a global team. Everyone is going to read my story, all the good, the bad, the ugly, people that work with me. What have I done? Oh, I was just like thinking and sitting in that moment, like, and there was a moment like, oh my gosh, this feels extremely vulnerable. And the feeling surprised me and overwhelmed me. And then I got this call right after from the senior executive at Facebook. He says, by the way, I read your book in 2 days and I couldn't put it down. Thank you. Because I was facing some professional challenges and it helped me completely shift things for me. And it helped me see life differently. So I had to share that because it brought me back to my purpose. And I haven't doubted since then, right? I have a daily practice, meditation, all of that. And I to make sure that I stay connected to myself and to a higher power. But after that, her truth told me, what is the most interesting story? The most interesting story, besides the stories of resilience and grit, and you'll find, because it's about many stories. I feel there's so many stories within the main theme. By the way, there's loss and love and healing, all of it. But the most interesting story that people find is because through my lens, I believe I'm the only book out there that gives you a tour of the Mormon church dogmas and beliefs. And I told you this because I researched on it. And I was a high level leader in the church. And my purpose is not to make anyone wrong. My purpose is love. But also my purpose is truth. So then people can find themselves and they can make decisions for their life with all truth. And so I explain and give you a tour, for instance, on Mormonism. I was a Mormon missionary. I held high leadership positions in the church. Not everyone in the Mormon church gets to enter the Mormon temple. Church and temples are different. And I stay respectful to anyone maybe we have a Mormon here, because some of my values that I still have came from this organization. There are many wonderful people, and I still hold these values. But I do talk about, for instance, the temple rituals. They have Masonic rituals. And I tell you about their beliefs and why it's so hard to leave. Why someone can get ingrained into a dogma so much that it controls your life to the point that you feel that if you leave, you're completely lost and there is no more meaning in your life. And in my case, I did that. I purposefully went there so that hopefully you can get into the psychic of what it feels like to belong to any organization that makes you believe that without them, you're nothing. Or even a relationship, if you think about it. Any relationship that makes you think that without them, you are nothing or you're broken. So I went there and I was so purposeful. And that's when I told you there are moments I couldn't stop writing until 3 a.m. or so. And I will end up crying after I wrote all of that. Crying. I had to sit with those moments. And it's hard to write about all of that. You sit with those moments, is bravery. It's bravery to want to go to those moments. And I did it because I thought it was important. And I tell you this, that I explain all of that for you to understand why there was a moment in my life that I tried so hard to, because the Mormon church tells you that if you are gay or have homosexual feelings, it's a crime next to murder. So imagine living with yourself thinking that you are a criminal because of the feelings that you have. So there was a point in the book where I explained that I consider suicide when, after so many years of trying to stay in the religion, trying to stay faithful to my religion, committed, I tried so hard because I always told myself I got to put God above any feelings that I have. And then there was a moment after years, at 37, it took me until I was 37, until I completely went to a dark place, trying so hard, and then considering suicide. when I hit rock bottom, when I could have ended it all, then that was a turning point for me. And that was it, what saved my life, whatever happened at that moment, and you'll read it in the book. And that was the moment I said, I could not even be here with you. There was a possibility I couldn't have been here with you today. And I want to save other people's life. I want my story to be one of those stories and save other people's lives.
Thank you, Veronica. So we have a couple of questions in the chat box. So we'll start with the one from Diane. She's asking, you were told the universe rewards bravery. How can the women of the Quorum community use this message to make a difference in their lives and in their communities?
Yeah, thank you. And I love both of the questions. I just read Martha's question too. So I want to go Diane's and Martha's. Okay, where is Martha, by the way? Ah, there she is. Okay, awesome. I see Diane. Okay, the universe rewards bravery. You will read in the book about me doing many things that I probably was not necessarily, or I thought I was ready for or equipped to doing, but I jumped. For instance, doing the Ironman is 140 miles, and it takes the distance it can take up to 17 hours to complete it, nonstop. That's just one metaphor in the book, and I take you into what it takes to train for such a crazy race. The fact that I'm a woman of color, and I never like to play this, oh, woman of color, because I believe that we're all one also, and we're all here to become allies and advocates for one another, no matter who you are. But I just told you a little bit of the story that I ended up in a foster home and the challenges of my childhood. But look at the bravery. It's about choosing every moment to do the right thing. And to ask yourself, what's the grandest vision that I can have for myself? Because when I give myself permission to live my best life, I give others permission to do the same. Yeah. And think about where I came from, the difficulties, and I ended up going to Cornell. I went to Brigham Young University. I did a French literature. I studied in France, in Paris, and Aix-en-Provence, and all of that wonderful experience. And I went eventually to do an executive MBA at Cornell. I was nominated as the best executive MBA. Then Poets and Quants, which is a ranking agency for Ivy League MBA schools, selected my story. I have been a successful leader in some of the top companies, international companies in the world, right? And all of that, those things don't happen unless I chose every moment to believe that life circumstances, no matter whether it is a professional challenge, because we all have them. I think most people here are women. You know what it is to be a woman in the professional world. Sometimes we have to prove ourselves a little bit more. And sometimes we are so honest with who we are. Yes, this is what I know. Maybe I'm not ready for that next position. Maybe, and then sometimes we say this, and I can say this in front of my male colleagues. A man may not say that. Oh, I'm ready for this. But we have to be perfect. Well, we think we have to be perfect before we jump to the next thing. And there is no such thing. Sometimes you have to step into big shoes so that you can grow to that, the grand opportunity that you're stepping into. So, and I believe in that. I believe in bravery is in believing that there's nothing that you cannot do. And if you fail, like Theodore Roosevelt says, you fail fighting, so that your place is never with those cold and timid souls who have never tasted neither victory nor defeat. Yeah? And even in those failures, I consider failures, it's just the universe trying to tell you, like the GPS, recalculate, so you can get back on the right course. And it's a beautiful teaching. When I look back at all my failures as a leader, as a whatever, in my relationships, I go, you know what? Incredible. What an amazing wisdom I learned from all of this. And the wisdom comes and what am I holding myself accountable now to live better? Now that what does Oprah say? Now that I know better, I do better. So that's, hopefully that answers a little bit of the question, like now, wherever you are in your life right now, what is the most beautiful dream that you have for yourself? No matter what stage you're in your life. And that's what I want to ask you. What's the most beautiful dream? When it is time for us to go, no one is going to ask us how many cars we have, how much more money we acquire, which is great. I believe in abundance. I believe in abundance to live my best life and to bless other people's life. But what is what truly matters in life? And that's what my grandma's death or loss taught me. And that's how I try to live every day. What does truly matter in my life? And that to me is part of the bravery of choosing you first.
Thank you, Veronica. Definitely your story is very inspiring, right? Many times throughout, as I was reading your book, I thought to myself, if she could do it, I can. Not the Ironman thing, but the other stuff.
She's like, not the Ironman.
Not the Ironman. Yeah, definitely the choices we make define who we are. And we all put this extra pressure on ourselves towards perfection that is only making our lives so much more difficult without need, right? Yeah. Without us needing to do that.
Yeah.
So,
Martha, answer Martha's question.
So I don't know if you answered Martha. Did she?
No, I haven't answered Martha's question.
We're going there. So
I don't want to forget Martha.
Yeah, no, of course. So Martha is asking you two questions, right? One is if your grandmother knew that you wrote that book, and if you were able to share any of your story with her, whether in print or before that. And then the other question is, considering your Mormon background, how do you view religion now? And what do you have as a spiritual practice that sustains you?
Martha, you're getting me emotional. Oh, those are such good questions. All right, for the first one, I have to breathe because my grandma did not know I was right. I decided after. Oh my gosh, Martha, what are you doing to me? But my grandma wanted to write a book herself. And I feel that I'm honoring her own dream too, if I can answer that way. Thank you.
So part of those messages probably were coming from her, right? As you were feeling that connection and healing through your writing and connecting to your purpose. And you mentioned several times how you received content, for lack of a better word, from your higher self, right? So I have no doubt that your grandmother gave her contribution there as well. Yep.
Yeah, and her love that is throughout the book. The second part is, given your Mormon background, how do you view religion now? Do you have a spiritual practice that sustains you? This is what I think, that everyone should be entitled to follow or should be free to follow whatever they think is their best path to connect with themselves and God. And I honor every religion, every faith, or lack of religion or not. I think ultimately what we're asked from this higher power is to be good, is to be good to one another, to treat others with dignity and respect. And I think that if the path that we choose allows us to live with compassion, to live with dignity and integrity, then we're on the right path. And any path that causes division and makes us feel that we are the only chosen ones and the other ones are less than or are over there, they are the others. Perhaps it's not the religion's fault. Perhaps it's just that we're all trying to evolve, to understand what it means to be part of the human family. And I consider every religion, every faith, every path or non-religion, just what am I thinking in French? Chemin, a path, a journey for us to find, all of us, we're going to find one another at some point. Okay? Because I believe that we're part of the oneness. I'm not religious right now. I believe strongly in God, in the higher, in the universe, but I believe that the universe is benevolent. I believe that everything happens for my good, even the things that are hard. Even the things that are hard. I accept it more now. The person, relationship leaves me, I just obviously hurting. I just go, oh, it's meant to be. It's meant to be. For whatever greater vision than God has for me. Whatever happens in my job, it was beautiful for a certain period of time, and now something is happening. Something is being, the universe starts disrupting anything that no longer serves us. That's what it is. So the dark and the light come together in this harmonious dance to help us advance to the next stage of our conscious evolution. And that's my spiritual practice. I meditate every morning, at least 30 minutes, sometimes an hour, and I'm there with myself, with my own divinity within. And because I believe that the external world is a mirror of our internal reality.
Yeah, definitely. That's beautiful, Veronica. And no wonder religions in general are so imperfect. It's because it's a group of human beings, right? And we are imperfect as well. And we humanize God in this quote unquote person who says you yes, you no, love and hate and all of that. I don't think we are evolved enough yet to understand the purity of that higher love and how it works. So we interpret it with our very limited understanding.
And then we accept ourselves because there are moments that we hate. There are moments that we are upset, angry, we feel betrayed. I'm not saying don't, no, you have to sit with those moments and feel them and say, there's a reason why I'm feeling this way. Yes, sit with it, because those feelings are medicine. They're trying to teach us something and help us resolve something within ourselves. So everything becomes beautiful at the end.
Yeah, definitely. It's very difficult to sit with the feelings, probably more difficult than the Ironman.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I would say, oh my gosh, some of the stuff that we have to go through as people, as women, and or whatever it is, the things we can't see, the emotions are harder even than the physical endeavors.
Yeah. So Diane is asking, we have a couple more questions in the chat box. We have 3 more questions. So Kelly is asking, you mentioned universe rewards bravery, but can you talk more about how the universe / work has rewarded your vulnerability and how to maintain or exercise that vulnerability in perfection / achievement-based society?
Yes, thank you, Kelly. What is Kelly? Oh, Kelly, I see her. Kelly, my God. All right. I love the question because that's a lesson now. I just shared with you that after like putting this out there, I had to sit with it. Oh my gosh, this is another moment of bravery, putting my story out there, because I told you also my shadows. I'm going to share. I'm telling you this, Kelly. This is as honest as it can be, my book. As honest and truthful as it can be. And now that I went through those moments, like, what have I done now? You know, now I'm telling you, I feel free. I have nothing. There are no masks. I don't work with masks. I remember the first time, the first few weeks that my book was publishing, I had to sit on Zoom calls with the leaders at LinkedIn and the people that report to me. I would just be like, okay, maybe they're reading the book, maybe they read that part. And then I know Evelyn, you're like laughing, but that's how and then there was a moment that for this couple of days after, I said, you know what? I'm free. I'm free. I have nothing to hide. I don't wear masks. And it's such a beautiful feeling to not wear masks because all of us have shadows. And when you demonstrate and you're free and you feel open to share your vulnerabilities, and of course we have to be measured. I can't, I can't tell you everything in the book because there are things that are just for me and they're sacred. But there are things that I feel like, yes, these are things that I feel called to share. And now I give others permission to feel vulnerable with me. I wouldn't get these phone calls now from people who say, oh my gosh, powerful men, someone who is even being interviewed at CNN from a financial firm and all of it, call me. And strong, powerful men. Oh, I think he partnered a research firm and whatever it is, and calls me and shared with me his childhood trauma. Intense. You will look at him on TV or something, you would think, oh, nothing touches him. But at that moment, he called me and I listened to him for an hour, close to an hour, and he shared something so intimate. And I think it provides a space for us to help heal each other. And that's how I see it. Did I answer your question, Kelly? I think so.
Kelly, give us a thumb up if
Kelly just wrote, I think. There we go. Absolutely. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. So we have another question from Diane. How did you gather the strength to choose to do the Ironman, to complete the training and the actual race? And I would add, what were some of the lessons you learned from that experience?
Okay, so for those who do not understand what the Ironman, let me just give you how it is. It's a 2.4-mile swim, 112-mile bike ride, and then a full marathon right after, 26.2-mile run.
And so, that was exactly my face when I read it.
I see Anne laughing. No,
yeah.
Maybe I should hang up. I don't want to be on this call. And so I'm telling you this is because I am someone who's always been athletic, but I did not know how to swim. So, and not only did I not barely knew how to swim, I was scared of the water. So you will read in the book what I had to go through, the psychological struggle for me not to panic. Well, there are several times that I panic in the water. So going from the pool training to the ocean, the middle of the ocean, and swim. And I had to have a coach. And I will have moments like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die right here. This is set for me. And then I'll ask myself, why in the world am I doing this? No one has a gun in my head to tell me that I need to do this. But what's driving me? And maybe I don't have the answer yet. What has driven me to do all of this? But one thing is about the human capability. Because I believe that we're capable of so much, and we don't know what we're capable of until we jump. And I think we can draw a parallel of that to our personal lives, to our professional lives. And that is why the Ironman serves as a metaphor throughout the whole book. I did not want to live with that fear anymore. And it's so that when I went to observe before I decided to do the Ironman, I think it was Kelly that asked a question, but or was it Mark? Okay, so when I went to do the Ironman, I first before I decided to do the Ironman, I first went to watch one in Lake Placid, which is a very famous Ironman race. And when I watched those people, all ages, by the way, young, 80 years old, I mean, you name it, it is and some people finish earlier, and some people finish close to midnight, starting at 6 a.m. And when I was watching and seeing the human spirit of not giving up, and people walking, crawling, whatever it is to get to that finish line before midnight, I felt so inspired. I said, oh my gosh, the human spirit is amazing, it's majestic, it's beautiful, and I'm not meant to be on the sidelines. I'm going to do this. And I wasn't sure I was going to be able to finish, but I committed myself. And the most beautiful feeling is when I crossed that finish line. And you're going to read in the book what I went through. Don't think it was easy. I got sick throughout the Ironman. And I had to tell my mind, you are stronger than your body. You did not train for a whole year to do this race, to stop right here halfway. But that's like life. We did not get the education we got. We did not go through the struggles in relationships we went through. We did not to stop right here, right now, no matter how old we are. We are going to get to our own finish lines, whatever that is now in our lives. And that's what drove me. Did that resonate? Did that answer your question?
Yeah, and I think it probably addressed Martha's question as well. Is that right, Martha? No, okay. So Martha asks, how do your athletic pursuits impact your work? Do you find the discipline with athletics has shaped how you approach other aspects of your life?
I love Martha's question because it takes me to another layer of how I connect this to my professional life. Think about it. I spent most of my career in the financial service. I was even in the equity trading floor. So think about it. The only woman and the only woman of color sometimes, and that's sitting there with this man. And I think it gave me the confidence, the strength. I was walking and some of these men did not. I remember one time, I'll start with this fun answer. One time, I wouldn't say I was embraced initially to work there in the trading floor with all of them. And I had to prove myself again and again. But I remember, I wouldn't talk about my achievements in front of them, but I sat there. Some of them knew I was an Ironman, all of them. I sat there and I was training for a simple half marathon. And for me, that was just like a nice training just to keep myself active. But there was the training floors are open, everyone is sitting next to each other. And then one of the guys, like who's sitting on the other row, turns towards me. Hey, I heard you're doing a half marathon. Let me tell you how to train for it. And he was telling me, you should do this. And I didn't answer. I just let him talk and tell me how I should train, how I should do it. And I inside of me, I was smiling. Okay, I'm going to let him just feel powerful. Tell me what I need to do. He had never even done a marathon himself. He's done it. And then he kept on talking and talking how I should eat. And then another guy turned around and says, you know that she's done an Ironman, right? And he was like this, oh, okay. And he turned around and went back to work, right? They went back to work. And I'll tell you this, it's always giving me a sense of discipline. That things in life are not going to happen unless I apply myself. For those who are familiar with the financial markets, I had to pass a series 7, 63, 50 something. I am not going to do this. I'm an immigrant, different language. I don't like excuses. I don't do excuses, because excuses are limits that we throw on ourselves. I told myself, okay, there's some things I don't understand. I'm just going to have to read it twice. Oh, it's 23 3-hour tests to prepare for series 7. Well, I may have to do double, whatever it is. But it gave me a strong sense of discipline and the sense that I can do anything. And if there is something that I fail, it's probably because it's not meant for me. But it gave me that, Martha. It gave me that sense of confidence, and I am incredibly disciplined.
Yeah, thank you, Veronica. So we are approaching our time. I know that Janet has a question about how your grandmother learned to read behind the curtains. I don't know, Diane, tell us how we are doing on time, because I want to be respectful and I know we have the announcements, and I want to ask Meg's favorite question before we conclude today.
Yeah, maybe there's too much to talk about. I know there's so many gems. If Veronica can just give us a tiny tidbit of how her grandmother learned to read, and then we'll turn it over to Meg if that's okay.
I'll answer in a few sentences. So for those who haven't read the book, my grandma also lost her husband. she lost her mom. Her mom abandoned her. So she grew up with a father who resented her. So eventually her grandmother was the one who took care of her. But she, because her grandma could only do so much, she ended up becoming a maid since she was a young little girl, like 4 or 5 years old. But her grandma used to take care of her, visit her and stuff like that. So because she worked for a very rich, wealthy family in Ecuador, they hire these teachers to teach their wealthy children in the living room. But my grandma wasn't invited. She had to do the chores. So what she did, because that's who she was, she will wake up early, really early, 4 or 5 a.m. and milk the cows, whatever she had to do. And then she'll hide behind the curtains so that she could be there before the teachers will show up to teach the other girls to listen to the lessons. And she will learn and listen. And then after they'll leave, she'll go there and then look at the books of whatever they went through the lessons. Yeah. Education was so huge for her.
Thanks, Veronica, for sharing that. So Meg's favorite question is, what is a call to action that you would like to, for this community to do or to think about?
Well, there are several messages in the book, and I think I see you as incredible allies and women of power here. Either if you're a person of color, it has always been my mission that my life is not to be lived just for me. I need to leave a legacy for those who look like me. The best compliment that I have every time I leave a job is my leader saying, how did I find someone like you? And you know what that does? Because I was the first person of color who was in leadership under them. And you know what that does and gives me such a big smile, because the next time someone who looks like me interviews, what are they going to do? It's going to be more familiar to them and say, oh, I want her. And that's what it is, to leave a trail of greatness, because we come from greatness. Okay, my people come from the Incan Empire, African descent of royalty, and I want us to go back to that. And I want, and I love, some of my best friends are white Americans, by the way, and have been my biggest advocates. Okay, men and women, men and white men and women have been some of my biggest advocates as well. And I'll ask you to continue to create a space of openness. Don't ask how the weather is. Take some time to ask about people's lives. Connect with them at the human level, because when you connect with someone's story, I guarantee you're going to continue to be a strong advocate for every human life. And I'm not just talking for people of color. I'm talking for, if anyone says anything about a Jewish person, I want to be there to speak loudly against it. If anyone says about anyone Muslim, I want to be there loudly to speak against it, or LGBT person or person of color. We need to be advocates for one another. And the way we do that is by connecting through our humanity. And that's how I'm going to leave you.
Thanks, Veronica. That is very, very powerful. Thank you so much for addressing our questions, sharing so much about you and your book, the process that you went through as you were writing it. That was definitely something I was very curious about. And thanks everybody for your questions and for your attention and your time here today. So I'll hand it over to Meg.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Gutierrez. Veronica, I have to tell you, while you were speaking this whole time, I've felt this enormous amount of, I was very weepy, I have to say, all the way through all of your stories, and still in this moment. So, but I was asking myself while I was listening to you, where's the tears coming from? And actually, they're sort of tears of inspiration. They're not tears of sadness. And so I wanted to share that with you, because I guess I really want to thank you for being so willing to share of yourself so fully, because you said something so powerful about, give people permission to be vulnerable, but because you're willing to be vulnerable yourself. And I think that's just so, wow, I just don't, I can almost can't breathe through it. It's so, that's so powerful. And I think the notion of, you mentioned something about giving people permission to be brave by being brave. And there's that, gosh, if that doesn't sort of sum up extraordinary leadership, I don't know what does. Like, I would start with that. And extraordinary humanity, which in today's world we really need. We need on so many levels. So thank you for actually touching me so profoundly with your words today. I can't really, I'm so grateful. So I wanted to share that. To the group, we always like to end with this call to action, and the call to action you gave us, Veronica, was so beautiful about leaving a notion of legacy. What's the legacy you want to leave? What's the legacy you want to walk around with? How are you inspiring, and how are you advocating? Those were two really amazing concepts that you left us with. Veronica, I love that as our call to action as a group. I just love it. I think it's January. It's a new year. It's a perfect moment to reflect on those concepts, I think, for all of us, because not only will it ground us, but it'll allow us to have so much greater impact on others, as we find our way around those concepts. So I love that. And I did want to share one other thing that really touched me, Veronica, that you said that I think is also a call to action, which was you said, what's your most beautiful dream? I loved that. And because it leads you to what matters most to you, and to not be afraid to actually dream it and go for it, So I loved that too. So I might just give that as a call to action to all of us as well. So how about that? That's 3 big ones. But I feel like we can do it. This is 2022. We've got it. We all have so much to offer, I think. So and feel so very inspired, Veronica, by everything you shared. So thank you for that. I would tell you all, if you haven't read the book, you might want to read it now. It's very moving. So I think you'll really enjoy it. And Gertrudis, I want to thank you for leading the discussion today. We really appreciate it. You also did such an amazing job of actually pinpointing how we all feel when we heard those words. So thank you for that. Diane's going to be in touch. We have tons of amazing programming coming up, so we look forward to sharing that all with you. So look out for emails for Diane. And I want to wish you all an amazing rest of your week and a great start to 2022. So thank you all. So great to see you.
Thank you.
Veronica, thank you again.
Such a pleasure to meet you, and